we are going to go around the table, and I would ask everyone to say their name. We have some new people here, and also say in one sentence, what are you here for? No, I'm joking. Say in one sentence, what are you working on? We are going to start. When did we start? Shall we start from that part of the table for a change? Yeah, because you always have it easy. Okay, Julie or Siobhan, who wants to start? And then we go.
I'll go.
Okay, and then we go that way. If we just untake opposites. Siobhan.
Hi, I'm Siobhan. I'm stalling. I've got a show tomorrow and trying to get everything finished for it.
What are you working on?
It's a solo show.
No.
Oh.
What? Okay.
I'm trying to hang it.
Let me rephrase. Say your name and then say in one sentence what is the question you are dealing with.
I'm not dealing with a question today.
Okay, what your work is about.
I can't think, sorry. I can't.
What you're working about? Okay, Siobhan, we'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
My name is Ben, and I'm working on a photographic guide through lenticular prints.
Okay, why?
Why? I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
Hi, I'm Neil, and I'm at the minute working on Where Does the Red Go?
We didn't hear it.
Where does the red go?
Where the red goes.
Yeah. Where does the red go?
Where does it go?
I don't know yet.
Very enigmatic. Okay. Is it the little Red Riding Hood that goes into the forest?
Could be a little red riding JPEG.
Okay.
Alex, I'm looking at modern technology in my life being a mother figure to me.
I didn't catch the second part.
Modern technology in my life being a mother figure to me.
A mother figure. Technology as a mother figure. Nice.
Ben, I'm working on perception of reality and time. Reality and time.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Denise, and I guess I'm trying to use photography to think about, to understand what is to be a human being, considering that we are metaphysically homeless in this world.
Okay. Okay.
My name is Hurley, and I'm working with the notion of meeting and presence in non-material spaces.
Presence in non-material spaces. That's nice.
I'm Joe. I'm just visiting Hurley.
What are you working on?
Nothing. I'm making workshops in tissue engineering.
In?
Tissue engineering.
Tissue engineering. And what problem are you working on?
Right now I'm in the lab. We printed a scaffold of the nose and just seeded it with cells.
Is there a certain question that tries to answer?
Just to get some practice.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Catherine, and I'm working on this place that transports animation and desire.
Thank you.
My name is Irene, and I am working in abstract photography related with duration.
Thank you.
I'm working on how to separate my mind and the body.
How to separate your mind and your body. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dean. I'm working on that weather resistance.
Okay.
I'm Alexander. I'm thinking of like change. I'm working on that. I'm not sure.
Okay. Right. You're not sure what to work on.
I'm thinking about change.
You think about change. Thank you very much.
My name is Dario and I'm working on situating photography away from its apparatus.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Matilde and I'm working on the sense of loss, wounds.
Mm-hmm.
My name's Rupert. I'm working on small drawings showing chance alignment of everyday objects.
Okay.
I'm Valentina and I'm working in the relation that exists between duration and memory, and I'm trying to understand how dementia works.
How was it?
Dementia.
Dementia works. Excellent. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lucrezia and I'm trying to prove the existence of my bodies.
Okay. Thank you very much. And who's behind?
I am Elisa. At the moment I'm working on cutting the paper.
Cutting the papers.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm Marian and I'm trying to find out what erasure means to me because I'm erasing things.
I didn't hear very well.
I'm trying to find out what the act of erasing things means to me.
What erasing means?
Yes.
Like erase the coin, this kind of thing.
Well, kind of, starting there, but
Okay.
yes.
We might get at that today.
Hi, I'm Lena. At the moment I'm trying to understand history, the cinema, the
Okay, and also Mariana, what course are you from?
Fine arts.
Fine Art MA?
Yes,
First year, second year?
first year.
Thank you very much.
I'm from MRS Moving Image first year.
First year, okay, great, thank you.
My name is Vinicius. I am researching the similarity between the way humans and computers see an image.
Okay, very good. Yes, thank you.
Hello, I'm Maximilian and I try to relate the death and JPEG.
Death in the JPEG.
Yeah.
Nice.
Hi, I'm Esther and I'm working on experimenting with the color theory, RGB and CMYK. Maybe I'm also trying to find the red.
Okay. But when you experiment with them, what are you trying to find out?
Well, right now it's just the beginning because I was working on spectrum, so I'm just separating the colors in RGB and CMYK.
I see.
And experiment to see what happens. What can I see and what can I not see?
So you experiment with the visual or the visible,
Yes.
or maybe the difference between the visual and the visible.
Yeah, what your eye can see and not see.
Okay, thank you very much. Good.
Hi, my name is Lena. I'm working on the transubstantiation of the ordinary, as an order, as an everyday.
Okay, good.
Hi, I'm Vishal. I'm just trying to learn how to edit video.
I didn't hear that.
How to edit video?
How to edit video. What problem are you answering? Why?
It's a bit of a long sentence. I'm trying to look at Hammurabi's code and Southeast Asian politics.
Okay.
And I need to know video editing to figure out how to do it.
Okay, okay. Good.
I'm Caro, and I'm working on perspective.
Perspective? Okay.
Hi, I'm Julia, and I'm trying to find out how I can become a social sculptor.
How you can finally become?
Become a social sculptor.
Subject.
Social sculpture.
Social sculpture. Oh, okay, okay. Good. Right. So first, welcome everyone, and I think it's really great that people from other courses come and join us. Hello. So I think it's really great people come and join us, and I think also we might need one day a bigger table. Are you ready to begin? Would you like to sit down? We do need the light though. Okay, and now I think we can. So, what I'm going to say first is that it is really good. It is really good to have guests, visitors, fellow travelers, provocateurs, spies, you know, everybody's welcome. We might need one day to have a bigger table. Yes, that can happen. But also it's really good to see some of the second year students here. Okay, so we're going to start the session now, and the way to start, I think, is to just remind ourselves where are we in our West to understand what are we talking about when we're talking about practice. Yeah, what do we mean by practice? That is the title of the whole series of these seminars, and how did we get to where we are? Just so we are a little bit clearer. We started, if you remember, from the question of representation. And we were asking, what does it mean? What does it mean to represent something? And then, I was looking for the 5. Do we have the reading on the Dropbox?
No.
I just emailed it to a few people and like CC anybody else.
I don't know where I got it.
If you
Maybe somebody might have removed it.
couldn't you put it in the CSM Dropbox? Put it. Make a folder, call it Deleuze and Guattari, and if you could put it there, I think we might. Maybe the introduction is on. Okay, we need to tidy up the folder. But could you email it to me?
Yeah, sure.
Excellent, thank you. Or just put it there and to get it from the Dropbox. So to cut a long story short, we looked at Lyotard and his essay, Presentation Unpresentable, where he was making an argument about the way the visual image or the art object, the art object has a correspondence to the political organization of society. So the way the society organizes itself is somehow reflected in the visual image. And so part of the argument was to show how the realist painting of the Renaissance and of the Age of Enlightenment corresponds to organizing a hierarchical political space. So in a sense, the perspective that you see in a painting also applies to the way power is organized in a sort of top-down form. And he also says that something quite curious, but not uninteresting, to those of you who just a few minutes ago mentioned that their interests are to do with the social or with the political, that might be particularly interesting, that when the viewer is standing before a painting, the painting delivers itself to the viewer in a very similar way, in a way that is similar to how the state is visible or delivers itself over to the ruler. So in an autocratic, hierarchical society, there is only one person who is surveying the whole of the domain, and that is the prince or the king or the pope, or call them what you like, but they are the person at the top of the pile. And in a sense, standing in front of a painting corresponds on some level to this experience, of just surveying the whole domain of the image as surveying the whole domain of the state. And then we moved to Heidegger's question. And Heidegger's main question was about the state of contemporary society, which is a technological one, and he was asking, how come, with all these technological advances that our society is so proud of, and rightly proud of, how come we are not closer to the things themselves? We keep feeling that despite the continuous improvement in every area of life, the continuous advance of progress, we are not any nearer to the things themselves. We are not any closer to knowing what it's all about, if you like. Then we moved to the quite tricky essay, The Question Concerning Technology, where, to put it simply, Heidegger mounted an attack on rationalistic thinking. He mounted an attack on instrumentality, on thinking that looks at technology as instruments, as tools, as means to an end. In other words, Heidegger identified a kind of malaise or a disease in the way the social sphere is organized, and he connected it to the way we are dealing with the world as a representation. So, in representing the world to ourselves as a picture, in treating the world as an image, or in other words, in learning about the world through making images of it, we are creating a certain relationship between us and the world. And this relationship is of a particular kind, and it forces us to experience ourselves as detached or separate from the world. Yeah? That was the argument, that was the reading of the problem according to Heidegger. And what is Heidegger's solution? I mean, so for instance, we have John, yes? John? Joe, yeah. So you were saying that you are building in a lab, I would imagine, a model of a nose bridge? Did I get that?
Of a nose, yeah.
Of a nose, yeah.
With
A model of a nose in order to understand how the nose operates, I would imagine, yeah?
No, it's more like to replace the nose. For
To replace the nose. So you're building, let's say, a model of a nose?
Yeah.
In order to replace the nose?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you can see how in this example, I could be wrong, so don't hesitate to put me right. It seems that there is this assumption that you can make a model that will represent or correspond to a real nose. Yeah. Now we don't have Ebony here today, or do we have Ebony? No. And that is a shame, because I think that would be a very interesting conversation. But you remember how Ebony was talking last time about a holistic approach to the body, you know, and the sort of the possibility of looking at the body as completely interlocked and connected. Not only the parts of the body, but also the body and its environment. Yeah, and the danger in isolating one element and dealing with it as if it is a standalone or an independent feature. Of course, I'm not saying that that's what you do, but I'm saying that there is a particular way of thinking behind, let's say, modeling a nose. And this way of thinking is based on this notion that a nose, for one, but also everything else, can be accurately and truthfully represented, and the representation is real. I mean, it's not real, but it is true to the thing represented. And this connection, of course, is incredibly powerful. Of course, you can really model the nose, and you can replace the nose. And just 2 weeks ago, there was a very interesting news story about a complete face transplant. Did you read about it? A complete face transplant for a firefighter whose whole face was disfigured in a fire, and he got a transplant of. Now listen to that. I think this is really very interesting. He received a complete facial transplant from a donor. Yeah. So you basically wake up with someone else's face. Now think through that as any way you like, psychologically, socially, politically. This is mind-blowing. And that is not science fiction. I mean, it is science fiction, but it's also happening. You know, a team of 100 surgeons worked for, I think, 48 hours. And there was about, I think it was about 50% chance of surviving this operation. He did survive. He will need to take he will need to take a medication all his life that will suppress this new skin rejecting its host. But you wake up with someone else's face. That's art, no? That's I don't know if have you heard of a French artist by the name of Orlan? Yeah. Orlan was doing small surgical interventions into her body, not replacing the face, just making small alterations to her face using plastic surgery as her way of molding herself. So this is really interesting. It's kind of that sometimes the most interesting artworks don't happen in the gallery. They might happen in an operating theater. They might happen in a hospital. You know. So you need to kind of keep your eyes open to these sort of things, because I think it's profoundly provocative that something like that can be done. Yeah. Gillian Waring, that we mentioned several times, the contemporary British artist, has a series of self-portraits when she wears masks of various famous people. Do you know this work by Gillian Waring? No? You do. But you could go and check it out. You know, it's quite interesting. Anyway, how did we get there? We were yes.
Have you seen a movie called Transcendence?
Have I seen Transcendence? I don't think so.
It's casted by Johnny Depp, which the story is of a man. So he was nearly dead. So his wife and his friend upload his brain, his mind, into a supercomputer. So then his mind and computer became one. So because he was a computer genius before, so his mind, he had the ability of the supercomputer, so he went so fast. Then he had the internet, so basically he was everywhere, and so then he did so much that he developed like nanobiology. So when he was dead, he only had one arm left, but he didn't somehow find a way to grow his own body back. But then people find that was so scary, and people don't believe that the man that he developed, which is completely like himself. They don't think that's him, so they didn't find a way to destroy him. Yeah.
Okay. Is it a new film?
I think it was last year.
Did you have a screening last week?
Yeah.
Was it good? Did it work?
It's good.
Yeah.
Was it okay to watch a film here?
Yeah.
On the evening.
I don't know if they liked it, but
sorry.
I'm not sure if anybody liked it. Or, I mean, they did say they liked it. I don't know if they were being polite to me or they actually.
But in terms of just the space and
all of that is fine.
But so maybe you can have it like a regular.
Yeah, we were actually thinking about that. We want to do it like maybe every Thursday or Wednesday after the.
So perhaps, for instance, you could suggest that you could watch this film one day. Okay, but I don't want to veer too far from where we left the conversation last time. You will see in a minute why. So Heidegger identified this problem, of that we consider technology as something out there that we use, and we forget that technology is not something we pick when we need to hammer a nail into the wall, or record a lecture, or write a note. Technology is our mode of being. We are in the world in a way which is technological. And it is particularly so in the age of modern technology. Because how Heidegger identifies, is the question?
No.
Okay. How Heidegger speaks about the difference between modern technology and old technology. Remember we spoke about the windmill, about the watermill. How Heidegger identifies the difference. What he says is different in modern technology. Storing energy. And what storing energy causes?
Disconnection from the world around us.
A different relationship to
A different relationship. And what kind of relationship? When you start to store the energy of the sun, of the water, of the earth, what happens? You disconnect. Why you disconnect? Because earth, wind, and water become for you what?
Commodity.
A resource. Yeah. Now, you see what underpins Heidegger's way of thinking is that the way we are, the way we breathe and think and love and play and fight, the way we are in the world is determined by the world. Yeah? So, the way we are is a response. I mean, we are made by the environment that we live in. Yeah? I mean, this is not such a weird thing to say, you know? So, if you live in Tibet, for instance, where it's very cold, then you probably eat a very different diet from if you live in the equator. Yeah. When I was in Tibet, the drink there is tea with butter, a big slab of butter in your tea, because it's energy. It keeps you warm. Yeah. So the environment is changing us. But Heidegger says, well, it's not that it's changing, it's not that there is some kind of you that then gets changed by the environment. You are the environment. What you are is what the environment is you are the life that this environment is making possible. So for instance, when people say, why don't we just go to Mars and start another colony because we probably just, you know, had enough of this place. Heidegger will say, but you will go to Mars and it will not be you on Mars. You know, there will be a completely different life. Mars will make a different entity, a different human being. In Heidegger's language, a different Dasein. Dasein is a very important German word that Heidegger is using to talk about the human entity. And what Dasein means? Being there, being here, being there, being here. The Dasein is the human being in the sense of someone who is here, who is also of the here, of this thing. So this is very crucial for Heidegger. The environment and when we start looking at the world as a resource for coal, for energy, for water, when we start storing energy, then we start looking at other human beings as a resource as well, yeah, and we end up looking at ourselves as a resource, and we also in that way lose our humanity. Because for Heidegger, our humanity is deeply linked to the world of which we are part. And if we lose this sense, if we look at the world not as something that is part of us, but as something over there that we can use, we lose on a very deep level, on a very essential level, the sense of who we are. We become something else. So what was Heidegger's solution to that? What was the saving grace? And there was someone here who said, we cannot finish this session, that was last week, without figuring out what is the saving grace. Because it's just too gloomy, too easy, just too bad. Was it you, Shivon?
It was Natalia, right?
It was you, yeah. So what was the saving grace? The saving grace was to realize that technology, not only taking us away from ourselves, it also allowing us a way to grasp the way the poetic and the technical belong together and form the very surface of our life. So I want to talk to you here about this notion of the surface of our life. So you start to get the philosophical sense what is going on here. So for instance, here I have a book. Yeah, this is the Karl Marx, and that's for the PhD class in the afternoon. But what is the surface of the book? Sorry? Knowledge.
The
Good.
visible.
Sorry?
The visible.
The invisible?
The visible
The
part.
visible. Are you asking or saying?
Supposing.
Supposing, okay. Well, you could say that the surface of the book is this picture. Yeah, you could say that the surface of the book is this kind of glossy coating. But you could also say that the surface of this book is the technology of bookmaking. Yeah? Or you could say that it is, what was it? Do you get the sense in which?
Strategy.
Sorry?
Marketing strategy.
Marketing strategy. Very good. That is also the surface. Yes. Marketing strategy, or let's say that the way a piece of writing or a text becoming a commodity, we just spoke about it earlier in relation to the auction. The way a work of art is becoming a commodity, the commodity, the book as the commodity, is the surface. Very good. So you see, the question of the surface is a very interesting one. What is the surface of your artwork? What is the surface of the photograph? Is the surface of the photograph the content? Let's say you took a picture of a corridor, yeah, of a building. Is the surface of the image the content, or is the surface something else? Heidegger says the surface of the image is the technology that produces it. Yeah, and technology is the very surface of our existence in the modern era. So you see what Heidegger is saying. His move was to say, instead of thinking about technology as a tool that we use to achieve goals, he says there are two traditional ways in which people think about technology. One, that it's a tool to do things. Second, that's what humans do. What is the difference between humans and, let's say, monkeys or other primates? I learned it in school, and probably you learned it in school. Humans are different from other animals. In what? In that they use tools. Are you familiar with that? Yeah? Humans are different from other animals, lizards, whatever, because they use tools. Have you ever heard this expression? Have you ever thought, have you ever been told that that's what makes humans? The ability to use tools, to use technology. So one thing that makes us human is that we use technology. And another thing that makes technology is that it is something we use to achieve various goals. Bring the water from the river, build the nose, these kind of things. So, against this view, Heidegger says both these approaches, one, that that's what makes us human. Second, that this is an instrument to achieve goals. Both of them are anthropological, which is to say, they place the human being and the human experience in the center of the way we understand how things are organized. So in order to understand technology in the traditional way, we need to assume, to take as a given, that the human being and human experience is in the very center of the world. We begin with ourselves, we begin with the human. We are anthropological. Yeah? So, Heidegger's answer to this way of thinking is to say technology is not only a tool and the means to achieve goals, it's not only what makes us human, even though these two things are correct. Technology is also the surface of everything. Everything in the age of technology is technological. Everything is kind of coated with this film, and this film is technology. It's a bit like, if you have a piece of cake on a plate and you cover it with cling film, yeah, and the cling film holds it all together. This is technology. Yeah, this is technology. Technology is not part of anything. It's not a component. It's not a tool. It is that's what it holds everything together. Everything is held together technologically. So technology is the surface. That's why I think, Irene, when you said, marketing as a surface, you are absolutely right. Technology expresses itself as marketing. Technology also can express itself as the printing process, for instance. So that is the surface. So in a sense, going back to your practice, to your work also has technology as its surface. Yeah? So this is very interesting. Technology is not a tool anymore, it's not means, it's not if you go and you say, well, I'm going to insert a little bit of technology here. I'm going to go and, maybe upgrade my technology. You can do all these things, but it is also bigger than everything else. Technology is bigger than the sum of all its parts. This is the surface, or you can say this is also the ground. And that means that there is no stepping outside of technology. So, and understanding that for Heidegger, this is the saving grace. And understanding that in this surface, the poetic and the technical, the practice, the physical and the poetic are completely and utterly merged together. So that's where Heidegger left us. And it's all well and good, if not for a small problem, that Heidegger's desire to somehow step away from the rational and the logical into this domain where the technology and poetry are simply fused together in this kind of intimate embrace, also somehow led him into the intimate embrace of the Nazi Party in Germany. So this rejection of rational thinking and this rejection of instrumentality also somehow brought Heidegger to a very difficult political position. While we're not going to get into this question of Heidegger's politics today in great detail, what I think is interesting is that this rejection of rational thinking and this suspicion of instrumentality and rationality and the scientific method leads Heidegger into the arms of another form of thinking that privileges, that says, well, no, let's not consider things from a logical perspective. Let's consider things from a perspective of intimacy, of connectedness, of being one with the world. But this being one with the world was also something the Nazis wanted to achieve. Yeah? The Nazis also were saying, for instance, that we need to go back to our roots as a nation. We need to go back to feeling one with our German spirit. One with our with the forest and the river and the mythological creatures that live there. So that was kind of a problem. Yeah? Okay. The reason I'm telling you that is because we now entering the new domain of philosophy that is kind of beginning, that taking something from Heidegger, we'll see in a minute what, and reshapes it for the environment of post-1968. Do you know what happened in 1968? Paris Revolution, the student riots, 1968. Yeah? Anyone here can give us a very brief explanation of what actually happened? Do we have any French people here?
Yeah.
I don't need to be French to answer this question, but so what exactly happened?
So we start from the Sorbonne.
Yes.
And
Sorbonne is one of the Parisian universities.
Yeah. Yes. One of the big Parisian universities, but all the name is Sorbonne, but they are in different districts.
Yeah.
So it starts in the one near Saint-Michel, and after it was a strike with students, and it starts in Saint-Romain, the Quartier Latin, and after it became a political thing because teachers, people from everywhere began to go to the strike also.
Okay, and what people were striking about? What people wanted?
To reverse the government and to have a more equality society, I think.
To have more equal society, that's true. Yeah, to have more equal society. Also, I think because most of the people who went to the streets, at least in the beginning, were students. They also wanted to be taught in a slightly different way. No, they wanted to be taught a different way of thinking. But I think another thing happened, and that's why I'm asking if anyone would correct me or make their own comments. But it seems to me that people also went to the streets because it was fun. You know, there was a kind of sense. It was a revolution, but it was also a happening. Yeah, it was a rejection of the old values, but it was also a party. Now we're going to go to that in a second, but we're going to first look at right. Just so we are absolutely clear, what point we left with Heidegger and technology. So as I was saying, Heidegger proposes this, says that technology is not just a tool, it is the surface of everything. And in this surface of everything, there is a complete unity, complete fusion of the technical and the poetic. Nowhere this fusion comes to a greater and fuller realization than in Leni Riefenstahl's films. And her most famous film, The Triumph of the Will. Anyone heard of that? You didn't. Okay. Who was Leni Riefenstahl? Who was Leni Riefenstahl? She was a German filmmaker, a pioneer of mountaineering films in the 1930s, and later she was Hitler's personal filmmaker. Riefenstahl. Leni Riefenstahl. Now, as an aside, she is also a great photographer. So you see, not only philosophy has this little problem. Photography also seems to have this little problem, that one of the greatest practitioners of the craft of photography and cinematography also happened to make the best documentary films ever, but unfortunately for Hitler. Yeah, and when I say the best documentary films ever, I mean it. Until today, if you are studying documentary filmmaking, Leni Riefenstahl's Triumph of the Will and Olympia, her two films, the first Triumph of the Will about the Congress of the National Socialist Party in Nuremberg in 1934. The Congress of the National Socialist Party, which is this film about, this documentary film is until today considered the greatest achievement of documentary cinema. And her other film, Olympia, is until today, that's how you film, that's how you make films about the Olympics or about sport. It's unsurpassed in its beauty, in the way it is such an immersive visual experience. Yeah? So, I think this is quite interesting.
There is a film, a documentary about her as well. I think it's called Leni. I don't
it's a great film.
It's a very good
I know. Yeah. If you can find out the name and email it to us, or maybe, you know what, if I can make a suggestion for your cinema club, this film about the would be a really brilliant thing to watch if you can get it on a DVD. It's really interesting. She died just recently. Well, she lived to a very old age, and but I mean, there's something incredibly interesting about this person and the way she holds herself. But anyway, it's fascinating. We could talk about it for a long time, but we need to get on. Then I would just want you to get a little sense of what we are talking about, because nowhere there is a better fusion of technology and poetics than in this film, The Triumph of the Will, which is, it's a film about Hitler. I'm going to show you a little bit. So here is obviously the Führer entering the city. Can you see on that side? I'm going to speed up a little bit because I want you to just get a little bit of a sense of how it works. Do you see the smiles? Do you see the energy? Just join them, no? They have so much fun. Technology and the poetic, the desire, the joy, the happiness, the technology, it's all really closely linked. We're going to go a little bit forward.
Den Kongress des 6. Parteitages eröffne ich mit dem ehrfurchtsvollen Gedenken an den in die Ewigkeit eingegangenen Generalfeldmarschall und
Erscheinung, die nicht zur vollkommenen Anarchie führen müsste. So wie die Welt nicht von Kriegen lebt, so leben Völker nicht von Revolutionen. Es gibt das Treue deines Söhnes ist euch passieren sehen.
This is how you make a documentary. Interesting, notice the camera angles. Notice how much is communicated from the point of view of the camera. Where are you here? You are under the feet of the soldiers or the builders. How small it makes you feel. And then the one, the Führer. the mass and the one.
Deshalb friedfertig sein und mutig zu sein.
Sometimes we spend almost the whole session just looking at this film and analyzing it. We might do it later on. Today I want to move forward, but I just wanted you to see that so you understand what are we really talking about and what is at stake when technology, desire, politics get fused in this way. Yeah, and as I said, it's easy to sneer at philosophy and say, look at you, philosophy, your greatest philosopher was a Nazi. But what if the greatest photographer also was a Nazi? What is that? And what if it's not by accident? So, that's where the saving grace and the danger lie. So, that's why the next thing we're going to look at is Anti-Oedipus, Capitalism and Schizophrenia, which is this book by Deleuze and Guattari. Now, we are making our leap into the contemporary philosophical moment because, broadly speaking, this way of thinking that started after 1968, after these political revolts, I would say continued roughly until, or exactly until, September 2001, until the Twin Towers and the attacks on New York and Washington in September 2001. What happened after that? You kind of need to figure out, because this is your moment. But I just wanted to realize that we are now really dealing with some form of the present. So next week we look at the text itself, but today I want to read with you the introduction, which is the preface by Michel Foucault. And the introduction has a subtitle, which is, it's not here, but it is known as an introduction to a non-fascist life. What, I mean, we already saw this Leni Riefenstahl's Triumph of the Will. So we kind of started already talking, in a sense, about this political thing that is known as fascism. What is fascism? What is fascism?
The death of the individual.
Good, death of the individual. That's a good one. Anyone else? Anyone knows what is fascism? Well, it's one of these words that people only use in relation to others.
Totalitarian.
Totalitarian.
So, it's based on the state.
Very
it's
good. Yes.
The state control everything.
Yes, very good. Yes. No one ever wakes up in the morning and says, "Oh, I'm feeling a little fascist today." It's only other people who are fascists. Yeah, the other drivers on the road, the bus conductor, the politicians, the shopkeepers. You know, it's always the other person who is fascist. Now, there was an Italian philosopher, Giovanni Gentile. You heard of him? You heard of him? No, anyone heard of Giovanni Gentile? He was a very famous philosopher who is kind of considered to be the philosopher of fascism. He wrote some of Mussolini's greatest speeches. speeches, he goes through some of Mussolini's texts. And he wrote his own political theory. And his idea of the state was, and this connects to what people here said, the state is one. There is a totality about it. There is this sense that if you are different, then you really are different. You really don't belong. So, when people talk about fascism, the first thing you need to do is to ask what they mean by it. Because you will find that people have very different notions of what is fascist. But I will give you a working notion of what is fascism, or how fascism is measured. Fascism somehow relates to tolerance for difference. And the less tolerance there is in a society for people who are different, for ideas who are different, for lifestyles that are different, the less tolerance there is for difference, the more the society can be said to be totalitarian, total, homogeneous, and fascist. So the question of fascism always links to somehow the notion of unity, homogeneity. Yeah. So the German, the 13 years of the Third Reich is a great example of that, because Germans were incredibly consistent in building a fascist state, to the extent that if you did not belong to the homogeneous society, then you were marked visibly with a sign. So if you were a Jew, you had to wear a yellow triangle, 2 yellow triangles. If you were gay, you had to wear a pink triangle. If you were a lesbian, you had to wear a black triangle, not because black was the color for lesbians, black was the color for mad people. There was no such thing as a lesbian. You could be, there was gay, but as a lesbian, you didn't even get to wear a pink triangle. Even that you were not allowed. You had to wear the black one, because you were just insane. So, insane, black triangle, Jews, yellow triangle, gay, pink triangle. If you were different, if you were not part of the homogeneous consensus, that was very clear. You had to wear this difference. Yeah? Do you know why the triangle, by the way, and not any other shape?
They're always taking from the ancient signs, aren't they? I mean, the triangle is very symbolic, and the swastika as well.
The triangle is very symbolic, but it's also the most efficient way to cut a piece of cloth. Very practical. Very Russian. The most efficient way to divide, to get as many pieces from a piece of cloth, you cut it. Say, you can cut it into squares, but then you can divide every square into 2. Yeah? Triangles are just efficient. I think it's quite an interesting thing. So, that is the notion. And you can see that working. You can see, for instance, how arguments about refugees. Yeah, why this argument about refugees is so important? Because in the way we approach, in the way a society treats the other or the different, someone who is not like us, our own relationship to fascism is measured. Yeah? And as I said, the less tolerant a society is for difference, the more it is on a slippery slope towards fascism. Now later on, when we're going to read Freud, we're also going to discuss how sexual desire and laws and regulations around sexual activity also link to that. And we will see that actually societies that are tolerant for, open for various forms of sexual behavior are less inclined for fascist politics. There is Societies tend to impose very strict regulations on who can have sex with whom and what is permissible and how you should behave in public. These kind of societies, or in the house, these kind of societies tend to be more prone to fascist tendencies, to totalitarian tendencies. Totalitarianism is somehow linked to sex. That's another thing, and that's why I also wanted to mention that when we start talking about that, what happened after 1968, people also wanted to party, people also wanted to have sex, and that's why people went to the streets. Yeah, and that is important. Now, that was the introduction. We're not going to have a break unless you really want. You want? You okay? Okay. If you're okay to carry on, if you're okay to carry on, then we carry on, and we can pop out if you need. But if you collectively want to have a break, we can have a minute break. Okay. Yeah. Right. So now, how are you doing? Are you okay? Ready to begin? Who can read to us the first? Now, okay. I really like this text. I don't expect you to like it as much as I do, but I think it's just, you know, it's 2 pages. It's really incredibly brief. That's all it is. I think it finds a way to really extract something so essential and so useful and present it in a kind of in a form that you can practically like swallow like a pill. You can kind of inhale it, you know, like a perfume. You don't need to read 400 pages. It's all just there in these 2, and I think that's beautiful. And that's Michel Foucault writing an introduction to the book of Deleuze and Guattari. It is called Anti-Oedipus, Capitalism and Schizophrenia. What the title tells you, what is Anti-Oedipus? Who is Oedipus? Come on, who is Oedipus?
He's a Greek.
Okay.
That hasn't buried the mother.
Okay. Is there anyone else who is starving? You have food. Okay. You can eat. What is Anti-Oedipus? Who is Oedipus?
No, it's to the mother.
Sorry?
Is he in love with the mother?
Oedipus, that's right. Greek tragedy. Greek tragedy, Oedipus. Yeah. What else? What Freud done with that?
He used the myth to create the expression the complex of the
Oedipal complex. What does it mean?
missing, because it's about the missing the organ of sexuality.
Yes.
So he kills the father because it's about it's kind of missing the sexuality. I don't know to explain.
You are right, Maria. That's absolutely right. When Freud developed his theory of growth in a small child, he turned to Oedipus and he said, every child growing up at some point will have sexual desire towards the mother and will want also, of course, to kill the father because the father is the competition. Yeah. So every child in the story of Oedipus from the Greek play, Oedipus is a guy who finds himself in a situation in which he kills his father. He meets this old man sitting by the side of the road. They have an argument. He kills him. And he goes into town, meets this beautiful widow. They get married. They have children. Everything going fine. He is the head of state until one day everything starts to unravel and he realizes that the old man he killed was his father and that the woman he married and with whom he had children is his mother. And Oedipus then, of course, is very sad. That's Oedipus. Now, what Freud is saying What Freud is saying is that every one of us, of you, is Oedipus. Everyone finds themselves desiring the mother and wanting to kill the father. Because let's take a boy child, a male child. As the child is growing up, he realizes that the father gets to do quite interesting things in life, goes out, goes to the pub, meets some friends. The mother just sits in home, cooks, cries, has nervous breakdowns. So, so the child says, "Oh, that looks awful. I want to be more like him." The role of the father, though, is taken. It's daddy. So daddy is the king. Daddy is the linchpin of the household. If you want to become daddy, daddy has to go. So somehow, part of growing up, Freud says, is killing the father. And we all have to do it, either literally or metaphorically, because at some point we assume the role of the father. Yeah? At some point, the previous generation has to vacate the posts, the roles, the responsibilities, and let the new generation take charge. That's painful. That is really like killing. Yeah? When you come to your parents and say, well, guess what, I'm going to do the finances from now on because you are not capable anymore. Or it's not you who are going to decide where to go on holiday. That's what Freud is saying is the Oedipal move. Now, for Deleuze and Guattari, when they came to write their Capitalism and Schizophrenia, they had a problem with this approach. Not because they did not believe Freud, not because they didn't find that interesting and provocative and really incredibly rich way of looking at society. The problem they had with it is that it is too total. Everyone, but everyone, is an Oedipus. Everyone desires the mother and wants to kill the father. And so their problem is not so much with the way Freud framed this notion of growing up and explained it, but the way he suggested it is total. Do you see where we're going with it? There is a little danger lurking in trying to build this total system. There is no way out of it. You have to be in the Oedipal movement. It's just like you have to be, not just like, it's very different. But there is a correspondence with what we said earlier about fascism. You have to be within the consensus. There's no stepping out. If you step out, you are either gay or Jew or lesbian or both. Yeah? You have to wear a tag and you will most likely get killed. Yeah? So this totality of this Freudian move, that was the problem that Deleuze and Guattari wanted to draw our attention to.
I was just putting the book.
Okay, well, it can be interpreted as if you were asking a question. No, you can do that. That's the case.
But why is Jew put aside? I thought that just difference.
Why?
When you say, when was that Jew?
Jew.
Yeah. Why are they different?
From the perspective of the Nazi Germany.
Oh, Nazi, okay.
Yeah. I said I was just drawing. I said there is some level of correspondence. I just want you to hear that there is a certain danger in total solutions. Totality has a political underbelly that can lead, under certain circumstances, to fascism. Yeah, and Deleuze and Guattari, they will say, we will see it next week, they say the problem with the Freudian analysis is that it's for everyone, it's total, it's all encompassing. Now, against that background, we can turn to the Preface by who can read to us The very
Can you turn the thing just a little bit? Like
the screen or the projector?
The projector.
Right. Yes.
Fantastic.
Can you see? Sorry? Make it bigger?
Thank you.
Okay? Good. Can you see on that side, Lena? Can you see?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Can someone read to us the first paragraph? Go ahead.
During the years 1945 to 1965, when referring to Europe, there was a certain way of thinking correctly, a certain style of political discourse, a certain ethics of the intelligent that had to be on familiar terms with Marx, not let one's dreams stray too far from reality, and one had to treat systems, the signifier with the greatest respect. These were the three requirements that made the strange occupation of writing and speaking a measure of truth about oneself and one's time acceptable.
Thank you very much, Asiya. Very good. Okay. So, in these 20 years after the Second World War, you see what 1945, the first one, the end of the Second World War. So, remember the film we just watched, Leni Riefenstahl? That was the beginning of the 13 years of the National Socialist rule over Germany, the Third Reich, Second World War. Do you know when Second World War happened? When it started?
1939.
1939. Right. When it ended?
45.
1945. Okay. Okay. How long ago that was? How long ago that was? 65 years ago, wasn't it? Yeah? Anyone of your, do you have anyone in the family who lived through the Second World War? Yeah? 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 I just want you to get a sense. What we just saw earlier, that was very, very recent. Yeah? It's our own history. Okay, so the 20 years after the Second World War, in Europe, Foucault is saying, there was a certain way of thinking correctly. Yeah? You can call it political correctness, even though it's a different form of correctness. There was a certain way of doing things intellectually. A certain way of being an intellectual. And there were three, Foucault is saying in this paragraph, there are three conditions that had to be met for you to be a post-Second World War intellectual. One, what is it? You had to be familiar with Marx. Two, you had to be familiar with Freud. You had to have Marx, you had to have Freud. What else you had to have? Signifier, science, yes. Three requirements from a politically engaged intellectual after the Second World War. First, you had to be a Marxist, or at least you had to understand, you have to be versed in the Marxist discourse. We will, in a moment, try to understand what exactly that means. Second, what does it mean to say your dreams should not stray too far from Freud? It means that you had to also accept Freud's analysis of the unconscious. Yeah? Freud's analysis of the human being as made of three parts. Do you know what are the three parts from which a human being is made? Ego. No. Ego, 1. 2. Id. 3. Superego. What is the ego telling you?
Ego is the who merged the superego and the S.
What is the ego telling you? You wake up in the morning, the alarm rang. What the ego is telling you?
I have to wake up.
It's telling you, wake up.
No,
wake up,
this is the
wake up, time to go.
Is the one who wake up.
Is the one who wakes up. That's right. The ego tells you, look, it's Wednesday, get up, time to go to work, time to go to school. What the id is telling you in the morning. Stay in bed. It's nice here. The cat will come. You know, just pretend nothing happens. Let's go back on the computer. You know, it's bored. It's we'll have so much fun. There's the id. What the superego is telling you.
You have to wake up.
The superego is telling you that if you were not that lazy, you could have finished this MA already many years ago, and the neighbor's son or daughter are already a successful artist, you know, and you've just been wasting your time, because the superego is the voice of the parents or the church or whoever you like, who is standing there and telling you off. How do you know? Whenever you think in terms of I should have, I should have read it so long ago, people say, I only now started to read philosophy, I should have started 10 years ago. Well, guess what? That's your parents talk. That's your parents telling you, that you are just not good enough. So that's the three elements of Freudian analysis of the psyche. The ego, the id, and the superego. So, two things. You had to know Marxism, you had to accept the main notion that he refers to here when he speaks about Marx is that you have to accept the notion of class struggle. This is a very key idea in Marx. There is a class struggle. The struggle between whom and whom? The proletariat, the working class, and the capitalist class. Yeah, there is a struggle. The workers and the capitalists, people who work in the factory, people who run the factory. There always will be a conflict between them. There always will be struggle. Yeah, this is the basic premise of the Marxist thought. So the Marxist thought, class struggle. Freudian thought, the unconscious and the psychoanalysis and the ego. And sign systems signifier. You have to believe in sign systems and treat them with respect. And that means sign systems signifiers, sometimes it's called semiotics, and it refers to a way of thinking that is also sometimes called structuralism, in which you understand that the world is made of signs, and signs have meaning. So, for instance, there is a sign above the door, that says exit through here in an emergency. So the sign signifies exit. Yeah, we're not going to get into semiotics at the moment because it's not that interesting. But structuralism, Freud, and Marx, Foucault is saying these are the three components of a contemporary Western European post-war intellectual. What is the problem with that? Because, let me tell you, Foucault starts it that way because he sees that as a problem.
It's already going towards fascistic.
Why?
Because it's the only way.
It's the only way, and that is the problem. It's not because Marx is wrong. It's besides the question at the moment whether Marx is right or wrong. It's not that important whether Freud is right or wrong. The problem is that this is a total system. Yeah, it's like with Oedipus. It's beautiful, poetic, profound, clever. But if you say that it's for everyone, that's when we start to have a problem. Yeah, when there is no way out, when it's total, then that becomes the surface. Yes. Okay. Okay. So these were the three requirements that made the strange occupation of writing and speaking a measure of truth about oneself and one's time acceptable. So, if you wanted to be respected as an intellectual or an artist, which is the same thing, yeah, you had to meet 3 criteria. You had to demonstrate your Marxist credentials. You had to demonstrate your familiarity with Freudian discourse. And you had to understand how science operates. Yeah? So there were these 3 things you had to demonstrate or show in your work if you wanted to be a writer or an artist or an intellectual. Yeah? These 3 components. And then we have the next paragraph. Who can read that? Yes, please. Vishal.
Then came the 5 brief, impassioned, jubilant, enigmatic years. At the gates of our world, there was Vietnam, of course, and the first major blow to the powers that be. But here, inside our walls, what exactly was taking place? An amalgam of revolutionary and anti-repressive politics. A war fought on 2 fronts, against social exploitation and psychic repression. A surge of libido modulated by the class struggle, perhaps. At any rate, it is this familiar, dualistic interpretation that has laid claim to the events of those years. The dream that cast its spell between the First World War and fascism over the dreamiest parts of Europe, the Germany of Wilhelm Reich and the France of the Surrealists, had returned and set fire to reality itself. Marx and Freud in the same incandescent light.
Thank you very much, Vishal. Now, just a couple of points here. First, so until 1965, for these 20 years, Marxism, Freudianism, and people who, there is even a term, Freudo-Marxists, for especially a group of German intellectuals, also known as the Frankfurt School, who developed a social theory, really that took some elements from Marxist theory and some elements from Freudian theory, and people like Marcuse and his book One-Dimensional Man, Theodor Adorno. We'll come to some of these texts. Some of them are very, very powerful. Walter Benjamin is another one who belongs to this Freudo-Marxist group. So here Foucault is saying something happened after 20 years of that. Well, 2 things happened. First, the Vietnam War. Do you remember the Vietnam War? What happened? Well, what is relevant for us here is that suddenly the first major blow to the powers that be. So the enlightened West, the non-fascist West, won the Second World War. The fascists lost. The bad guys lost. The good guys won. Yeah, that was a bit of a boost for humanism, liberalism, because you could say, look, it's working. You know, we beat the bloody fascists. But then, when Vietnam War is happening, it is a blow to these very credentials of humanism, liberalism, democracy, because the American action in Vietnam is kind of a little fascist. Yeah? So that's a bit of a bummer. That's a bit of a problem. That's a blow. Yeah? So in a sense, the whole narrative of the good guys are just inherently better than the bad guys, and our democratic credentials are more powerful than the fascist credentials. This whole belief system gets a little bit cracked when you realize that it's actually the good guys who can also wage a fascist war, albeit not on the European land, territory, but far away in Southeast Asia. Yeah? But it's a bit of a problem. And what is happening? So one way to talk about it is a little bit like what Marx was saying here, against social exploitation and psychic repression. Yeah? So there is this rebellion starting to happen. against the social inequalities and against just, these restrictions on having fun. It might come as a surprise, but in the 1960s, that in most European countries it was still illegal to be a homosexual. Yeah? It was illegal, yes.
Yeah, and it was a disease.
It was a disease, yeah. It was a malaise. You could be hospitalized, or you could be chemically castrated, and that was done to Alan Turing, the inventor of the modern computer. So yeah, it was illegal to be a homosexual. Yeah, it was basically illegal to have fun. But the dream that cast its spell between the First World War and fascism over the dreamiest parts of Europe had returned and set fire to reality itself. Yeah. So there was a kind of dream. There was a kind of dream of the surrealists sort of suggested. Now, go and have a look at surrealism. The thing about surrealism is that, do you know any surrealists? For instance? Yeah. Who else? Dalí. Who else? Have you ever seen Andalusian dogs?
Yeah.
How many people here saw it? Okay. Can you, as homework, watch Andalusian dogs? It's a 20-minute film. You can find it on YouTube.
Sorry, what's it called?
Andalusian dogs. I don't know if it's the Andalusian dogs or just Andalusian dogs, but it's a film by Buñuel and Dalí and many other great people. Please watch it. It's a silent film. It's maybe 16 minutes or something like that. But that will save us a lot of time, because that will give you a very direct sense of what are we talking about. Okay, and let's move on a little bit forward. What about this next section? Here, can Dario, could you read this to us? Or maybe the whole of the paragraph.
But is that really what happened? Had the utopian project of the 30s been resumed, this time on the scale of historical practice? Or was there, on the contrary, a movement towards political struggles that no longer conformed to the model that Marxist tradition has prescribed, toward an experience and the technology of desire that were no longer Freudian? It is true that the old banners were raised, but the combat shifted and spread into new zones.
Okay, so here you can see how Foucault reading of Heidegger, of the essay concerning technology, coming back and getting reworked here. When Foucault is saying that there is a movement towards political struggles that no longer conform to the model that the Marxist tradition prescribed. It means that perhaps it is possible to conceive of a political struggle which is not just about the proletariat against the capitalist, the worker against the employer, the working class against middle class. Yeah? Perhaps there is another way to do politics than to always try to fit politics within this pre-given formula. Yeah? And perhaps it is possible to conceive of desire not only in terms of the id that tells you to stay in bed under the duvet, but as something that is not exactly Freudian, doesn't conform to the Freudian notion. So that's the question. how is it possible to have politics, progressive politics, that is not relating to this total idea of class struggle? How is it possible to have desire that is not relating to this total idea that if you have desire, it is really the desire to have sex with your mother?
You should think. Sorry.
Yes.
You should think out of dialectic.
Sorry?
Should we think out of dialectic discourse? Or
how to not to think dialectically?
Yeah, not in order to think about desire in terms of out of Freud, not related to Freud or Marx. Should we think out of dialectic because Marx and Freud create their discourse in terms of white and black,
Marx and Freud,
synthesis.
You are right, if I hear you correctly. Marx and Freud really operate on a dialectical model. Because what is this is a little bit outside, but I think it's an important point. I think you need to pay attention here to something, Maria. Marx's notion of class struggle is dialectical. You have the working class, which is the thesis. You have the upper class, or the capitalist, which is the antithesis. They come together, they fight, and out of this fight they produce a new form of existence, which can be called communism, for instance, which is this synthesis of the capitalist and the proletariat. It's the moment when the proletariat, when the worker acquires the tools of manufacturing and production that the capitalist had and owns them, then a synthesis happens, and what starts to come out of it is no more working class on the one hand and upper class on the other, but a synthesis that is called communism. Yeah? So the Marxian movement is dialectical. The Freudian movement is also dialectical. And what Foucault is saying here is that there must be a way to do politics which is not dialectical. Why is that important? And we didn't talk about dialectics around this table. We will in the future. But just to answer Maria's question, the reason it's important because dialectics is exactly this kind of total universal surface that covers everything. Yeah? And the question here, is it possible to have a politics that is not total? Does it help?
In terms of different, horizontal, differencing.
That's right, yeah, it's horizontal. You will see in a minute how it works. Now, this text is just beautiful, but let's have a look here. Who could read to us? Who could read to us from here and in page 12? Whence the three adversaries confronted by Anti-Oedipus. The three, Foucault is giving us in a very succinct form, the three sacred cows that this book is trying to slaughter. And what are they? Who can read to us? Three adversaries. Yes.
Whence the three adversaries confronted by Anti-Oedipus. Three adversaries who do not have the same strength, who represent varying degrees of danger, and whom the book combats in different ways. One, the political ascetics, the sad militants, the terrorists of theory, those who would preserve the pure order of politics and political discourse, bureaucrats of the revolution and civil servants of truth. Two, the poor technicians of desire, psychoanalysts and semiologists who know the sign and symptom, who would subjugate the multiplicity of desire to the twofold law of structure and act. Three, last but not least, the major enemy, the strategic adversary is fascism, whereas Anti-Oedipus' opposition to the others is more of a tactical engagement, and not only a historical fascism, the fascism of Hitler and Mussolini, which was able to mobilise and use the desire of the masses so effectively, but also the fascism in us all, in our heads and in our everyday behaviour. A fascism that causes us to love power, to desire the very thing that dominates and exploits us.
Did you hear that? Did you hear it? Rupert, can you read this what I just highlighted here?
So also the fascism in us all, in our heads and in our everyday behaviour. The fascism that causes us to love power, to desire the very thing that dominates and exploits us.
What do you hear? What do you hear Foucault saying here?
That we are all fascists.
Why? Why? What makes us so? What makes us so? Vinicius, what do you think?
Desire.
Sorry?
What makes what?
What makes us so? What makes? Why Foucault is saying that there is fascism in us all?
Desire for power.
Desire for power. Good. What else?
Oh,
what happened? Desire for power.
He's basically saying that everything we do, even if we are going to the supermarket, we're already fascists, right?
Be careful here. Be careful because it's not that could just old slasher you know. But there is not everything we do. But our love of power and our desire for the very thing that dominates us. Yeah? Have you seen the triumph of the will earlier? Have you seen all these soldiers marching, all these kind of glowing smiles on their faces? They're about to meet Führer. They have a date with the Führer. Well, they also have a date with their own death, because no one will come back out of this adventure alive. And they still desire it. They still want it. They still march forward and sing all the songs, you know, and clap all like thousands and thousands as one person. They desire their own death in the Russian winter. Why? Why would you want something that makes you a slave? Why would you desire so much to be a slave? Why would you desire so much for someone to send you to your death? That's what Foucault is asking. This is the fascism in us all. And Foucault is saying there is something in our propensity, in our tendency towards total ways of thinking, whether in politics or in psychoanalysis or in anything else. This tendency towards totality, towards homogeneity, is this thing that makes us fascist. Can you see how that is so very interesting? As I said earlier, very rarely people talk about themselves as fascist, but it's exactly what Foucault is doing. Because the question is not how do you stop fascism, or in our case, how do you stop ISIS, ISIL, Daesh, it comes under different names, you know, this kind of the murderous cult that is killing people at the moment. The question is not how you stop them, even though of course you have to stop them, of course you have to fight fascism. The question is also how do you fight the fascist within you? By the way, if you tune into the political discourse that is happening at the moment, that is one of the things that is being discussed, because there is a kind of double bind. If you really want to protect yourself from, for instance, ISIS by closing the borders to immigrants, then guess what? You already on the slippery slope towards having your own internal fascist way of thinking, may manifest. Yeah, that is, and you can see how this discourse around, at the moment, the discourse around immigration is directly linked to the question of ourselves. What is the price of safety? Is it okay to be a little bit more fascist and a little bit more safe? I'm not expecting to answer that, but when you look at the news, yes, Maria.
The safeness of a state depend. It's come from fascism, because to be safe, it's controlling. If I don't control, I'm not safe because I'm uncertain.
Okay, that's right. And
it's necessarily related to fascism, the safe.
And that's why we can desire the very thing that dominates and exploits us. Because we say, well, maybe it's better to be dominated and exploited but safe than to live a precarious but free existence. So here, the 3 points Foucault is raising that this book is dealing with. One is the political ascetics, the sad militants, the terrorists of theory, which is quite nicely put. These are the people, the bureaucrats of the revolution, the civil servants of truth. Whenever I read the civil servants of truth, I think about the kind of photography that is believing in the truth of the picture. You know, that's what it looks like in Syria on a estate. That's what it looks like. That's what a homeless person looks like. You know, when this faith in the truth of the picture, that's what makes you into a civil servant of truth. Yeah, this is so, you can hear the venom, you can hear the anger here. The civil servants of truth, the technocrats, the technicians of truth, the terrorists of theory. Yeah, I think that's absolutely magnificent. On the other hand, so you have, on one hand, it's the people who believe that the image, the representation, the picture is true. That's the enemy number one. Enemy number two is the technicians of desire, psychoanalysts and semiologists, for whom desire is always linked to lack and to structure. The lack is castration. The lack is, well, you want to have sex with your mother, but she's not available, so your desire is never really fulfilled. You're never satisfied. You become a fetishist. You know, all your desiring self is structured around lack, around absence, around homelessness, for instance. Yeah. So these are the two default positions that Foucault says this book is argues on. But finally, the major enemy is fascism, but not the fascism of Hitler and Mussolini or Franco. The fascism within ourselves. Yeah. So the book is trying to understand how this internal fascism is working. And let's move to this section. Who can read for us from here? This art of living. Could someone read to us? How about, but you haven't already read. Could someone from this side read? Okay, thank you.
This art of living.
Yes.
This art of living counter to all forms of fascism, whether already present or in thinking, carries with it a certain number of essential principles, which I would summarize as follow if I were to make this great book into a manual or a guide to everyday life.
Okay, so what follows is how, basically, instructions, step-by-step instructions how not to be a fascist. Right. Sounds simple. Yeah? And it's about time someone actually said, what is at stake. So please, Lucrezia.
Free political action from all unitary and totalizing paranoia.
Okay, what does it mean? We're going to stop after each one and try to understand. What does it mean? Free political action from all unitary and totalizing paranoia. Okay, you want to make a change. You want to make something different. For instance, you were talking about gay rights. You want something is not right, something that you want to change. You join a militant group. You join a political organization. You want to make something happen. Rule number 1, free political action from all unitary and totalizing paranoia. Be wary of any totalizing principles in your politics. Yeah? These totalizing principles might seem incredibly benevolent. Communism is a totalizing principle. Yeah, communism, has some very great, profoundly humanist, interesting ideas. But if it is a totalizing principle, it is also fascism. Sadly. Okay. Next.
Develop action, thought, and desires by proliferation, juxtaposition, and disjunction, and not by subdivision and pyramidal hierarchization.
Excellent. Now, rule number 2. By the way, exactly the same rules. Now we are asking how not to be a fascist, but it's exactly the same. The same applies to the question of how to make an artwork. How do we make an artwork that is not fascist? Well, clearly, Leni Riefenstahl made an artwork that is very fascist. Yes, it's fascist by name. It's also fascist in its visual approach. It's fascist in its composition. In the very surface of the work, it is fascist. In where the camera is. Yeah. So, going back to the first point, the yellow one, free your work from totalities. Representation is a totality. The experiment is a totality. Yeah?
How can we differentiate work then be great? This is really something.
How can it be great? Well, it is great because it is totally immersive. Are you saying how can it be both fascist and great?
Yeah, because I think if something made for this purpose, it can never be great.
Who had the best uniforms? Who had the most good-looking uniforms? The SS. Why? This is a very good question, but look at, for instance, the architecture of the National Socialist architecture. Or look at Roman architecture, the architecture of the Roman Empire, which is great, and it's also totalitarian. So, yes, sadly, fascism can be great, but it is this greatness precisely that we need to be wary of. Because, and make no mistake, total systems are incredibly powerful. I've been many years ago in Cambodia, in Siem Reap. I don't know if any of you been. And there are these amazing temples in the middle of the jungle, and these temples are enormous, and every stone is carved with snakes and detail, and it's all slave labor. It was basically a civilization that destroyed itself by building temples. Because all the resources, human, financial, everything went into building these temples. Yeah? And that was a kind of an act of collective suicide at the same time. But the temples are great. Yeah? So that is, you see, one of the important things, if you really want to make a non-fascist artwork, is to understand the seduction and the infinite pull of the fascist art. Yeah? I think this is a very, very important question, Julie, that you were asking. So, the first thing you need to think about is how to free your art from all unity and totality. What does it mean, totality and unity? It means this subscription to a principle, this underlying idea. If you think that your artwork is an illustration, you're already risking falling into a totality. Yeah? Okay. Second one, develop action, thought, and desires by proliferation, juxtaposition, and disjunction, and not by subdivision and pyramidal hierarchization. So, this is very interesting because this tells you directly how to make art. One, your action, your thought, your desire, develop them by proliferation. What is proliferation? What is proliferation? Sorry? So, proliferation is spreading out. Yeah? To be prolific is just kind of outputting, making. So you make, and you work by juxtaposition and disjunction. What is juxtaposition? Opposites. What is disjunction? Separations, breaks. Yeah, build breaks and juxtapositions into your work. Yeah? You have to understand that this is how you make sure that your work is not totalizing, that you don't follow any totalizing principle. You build disjunctions and juxtapositions into your work. You don't follow one model. You don't take just the Oedipal model and run with it. You don't take the class struggle model and run with it. Yeah? You all the time work through proliferation and disjunction, and not by subdivision and pyramidal hierarchical system. The hierarchical system, the pyramid, is what Lyotard was talking about when he was analyzing representation. The pyramidal version of society, the pyramidal version of the representational visual space. That, Maria, I just want to suggest that when he says not by subdivision and pyramidal modeling, that is not by dialectics. Yeah? Proliferation, juxtaposition, disjunction are your tools to escape dialectics. And please, the next one.
We draw allegiance from the old categories of the negative: law, limit, castration, lack, lacuna, which Western thought has so long held safe as a form of power and an access to reality. Prefer what is positive and multiple, difference over uniformity, flows over unities, mobile arrangements over systems. Believe that what is productive is not sedentary but nomadic.
Third rule for your art and for your life. Withdraw allegiance from the old categories of the negative. So, be wary of the negative. What is the negative? The picture is not the thing. The thing is not the picture. That's negative. Yeah. What is a photograph? A photograph is, well, there is a very photographic negative there as well. Yeah. But the photograph is not the thing. Don't operate with systems that rely on the negative, the castration, the lacuna that we discussed earlier, limit, law. These are all negatives. What the law says? The law says you cannot do that. Yeah, this is negative. Yes, no? Okay, this is negative. Be wary of all negativity. Don't rely too much on systems that place lack, absence, or castration, or limit, or law in their very center. Yeah? So this is, yes,
just real quick, could you give an example of subdivision, like in somebody's like artistic discourse? I was just having trouble like
Subdivision.
applying it to like real life.
Subdivision means, I think, dividing a whole into some parts and saying that the parts come together and make the whole.
So how, like, it just a direct translation is like.
For instance, you might say, don't make a series of 20 portraits.
Okay.
For instance, do one and then do something else. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
I think the question is you just need to ask where is the hierarchy in my own work? Where is subdivision in my own work? I mean, I think we are working through all these questions very often without kind of acknowledging that that's what we are doing. But now Foucault is kind of coming back and giving some very clear definitions to quite familiar art practices. Withdraw allegiance from the old categories of the negative. And you need to understand that all these categories of the negative, whether it is the law or the castration or luck, they all relate to a situation in which you have a starting point and then you have an end point and you go on the path to reach your goal. So subdivision might be, I think that probably will answer it better. Subdivision might be saying, okay, here is my goal, A. I will divide it into several steps and I will go step by step by step by step to reach my goal. That might be good if you want to get an MA or if you want to get a PhD. Yeah, there are some things for which working in that way is very useful. If you want, for instance, if you have a goal, like for instance, I want to move to South America, then you really need to subdivide it into small steps and work through these steps. You need to learn Portuguese, you need to save some money, you need to find what is the situation within the employment market, and that's how you get there in the end. So making plans and subdividing is very powerful. But if you use that model when you make art, that's when the problem arises. Yeah? Because that's when your artwork can become, well, boring, predictable, but also totalizing. Yeah? So this notion of subdivision relates to a way of thinking in which the end goal justifies the means. This is called teleology or telos. When you start when you plant a seed in the ground and when you get a big tree growing from the seed. So,
What was it called?
telos, teleology. So withdraw lines from these old categories of negative, which Western thought has so long held sacred as a form of power and access to reality. Access to reality and power as given by the law, by the negative, by castration. Prefer, on the other hand, what is positive and multiple, difference over uniformity, flows over unities, mobile arrangements over systems. Believe that what is productive is not sedentary but nomadic. What is nomadic? Who is nomadic? People that have no house. Homelessness is a form of nomadism. To be a nomad is to have no home. Prefer things that are nomadic, that are fluid and flexible, over things which are sedentary, over things which are fixed. Prefer movement over fixity. Prefer what is positive and multiple. Prefer difference over uniformity. What does it mean to prefer difference over uniformity? So, for instance, sometimes I walked into a gallery, and into a gallery, let's say, into a photography exhibition, and my heart sinks, because all I see is this line of frames on the wall, 60 inches from the ground to the middle of the image, in just one straight line, and then on the other wall, then on the other wall. And you walk into that space, and even before you know what every individual picture is about, you know that there is uniformity here. There is uniformity. And because of this uniformity, how interesting it can be, how interesting it can get within this uniformity. It is already a total system, a picture in a frame in a glass on the wall, at a certain height, at eye level. It's very, very fixed. Uniformity, what word it is? What word uniformity reminds you of? Uniform. It's the uniform. What does it mean to wear a uniform?
Equality.
Equality, that's a very benevolent way of looking at it. But uniform, wearing a uniform.
You belong to a group.
Sorry?
You belong to a group.
You belong to a group.
You're
Yes. Not
not
only belong to a group, your identity is the one of the group. You go on a date. You go on a blind date, for instance. Yeah? And you walk into the restaurant, and there is one table where only one person, with only one person sitting. So clearly they are waiting for you, and they are wearing a suit and a tie. So I don't know about you, but for me, it's not promising much. Yeah? Why? Because it's a uniform. Yeah? So beware of uniforms. Uniforms are not, they are not often manifest in, shiny buttons and kind of jackboots. Uniforms can have different shapes. Uniforms can also have various guises, but prefer difference over uniformity. You went into you remember the big space show last week? One thing you could say about it with certain level of certainty is that there was not much uniformity there. By looking, let's say, at half the show, you could not make any prediction about what the other half will be like. Yeah? It was really multiple and different. You looked at one thing, and the next thing could have absolutely nothing in common. Yeah? So you see how this notion of proliferation, just making different things, and multiplicity and flow takes precedence over uniformity, over identity. Yeah? So difference, flows, allow you to somehow escape this notion of uniformity. When every picture in your portfolio is a representation of something, even if it is a representation of each time something different, it is still uniform. Sorry to tell you. It is still uniform. Do you think it's easy to get out of uniformity? Well, no, it's not easy. That is the task. Sorry? Get out of uniformity.
Yes, because you have just to keep being yourself. It's not adopt other ways of work or other ways of thinking. It just keep.
And how do you know what being yourself is like?
When you are authentic with yourself, when you are not follow the trend, when you are not follow other people or other ways of thinking, you're following your own truth. When you feel that you are doing your thing,
Yeah, when
and
you
it's
make
your
yourself
thing.
following what somebody taught you from the day.
Yeah, and also because you know when it is your thing.
Do you think so?
I think, but
Okay.
but also we are conditioned by the society and the world.
So why don't you read the next one?
Yeah, because we're living in this society and at some point we are conditioned by it.
Why don't don't you read the next one? the purple one.
Me?
Yeah. Yes, please, you.
Okay. That
Do not.
yeah, do not think that one has to be sad in order to be militant, even though the thing one is fighting is abominable. It is connection of desire to reality, and not its retreat into the forms of representation that causes revolutionary force.
Ah, now it's getting interesting. Now it's talking about you. Do not. What does it say? What does he say here? What do you understand from these 3.5 lines? You want to be a militant, okay? You want. What does it mean to be a militant here? Militant is sorry.
A rebel.
To rebel, exactly. Very good. You want to rebel because the situation you want to rebel against is abominable. It is abominable that, for instance, homosexuals don't have equal rights. Yeah, it is abominable that some people, have to get their food from a food bank. Whatever is abominable for you, you might want to rebel against. Okay, so Foucault is saying, as you're becoming a rebel, as you go and fight your fight, and as you fight against these abominations, these atrocities, what does he say? Do not be sad. Why? Do not be sad, even though the things you are fighting are terrible. Do not be sad. You don't need to be sad to be a rebel. What does it mean? Why not be sad? Because sadness is one way by which the state is controlling you. The state kind of wants you to be sad. When I was a little younger, in the 90s, there were laws to stop people dancing. There were laws against raves. Yeah? And I forgot now the formula, but there was a law against moving to repetitive beats. Yeah, and that's not a joke. That is, there was a law that if you come together with other people and you dance to repetitive beats, you were breaking the law. Yeah, that no one ever made a law against crying. No one ever made a law against sadness. You're welcome to be sad. It's happiness that is the problem. Why? Because when you are happy, you think for yourself. Because when you are happy, you are kind of free. Yeah? But in sadness, there is obedience. In sadness, there is also a kind of weakness. And Foucault is saying, don't think that just because you want to fight the good fight, just because you want to fight against oppression, do not think that you need to be sad. Yeah? Do not start from the point of sacrifice or self-sacrifice or castration or luck. Do you have a question?
No,
I'm
just...
I thought you might say that the people we saw in Leni Riefenstahl film, they looked very happy. Do not think that you need to be sad to be a warrior. And what later he is saying, it is the connection of desire to reality that possesses revolutionary force. So how do you become a revolutionary? Very simple. What does it mean to be a revolutionary in Foucault's sense?
To be happy.
You connect desire to reality. How do you connect desire to reality? That's what you need to figure out. How do you make your work, your artwork, how do you make desire work in your practice. What does it mean? It is, and let's read the whole sentence in full. It is the connection of desire to reality and not its retreat into the forms of representation that possesses revolutionary force. So, do you hear it correctly? What is it about representation that Foucault is saying? What do you hear?
The same, the uniform.
What is the problem with representation?
It's the state, it's the same mechanisms.
Representation is uniform, you say.
Yeah.
Correct. For that reason, representation cannot be revolutionary. Representation cannot be revolutionary. If you want to have, if you are a militant, if you want to change things, you're not going to change them by representing. For that reason, representing homosexuality not going to change anything. Representing a homeless person not going to change anything. Because representation is itself a total system. You already introduced totality. If you introduce totality into your work through representation, then you make no room for difference. Difference cannot coexist with totality. So, totality manifests itself in representation. How do you combat representation? Foucault is saying it's very simple. You bring desire into your work. Desire and not representation. Replace representation with desire. What does it mean for your practice? Yeah? Where is representation operating? How do you connect desire and reality in your practice? Do you see how the text is speaking? Is it interesting? It's interesting, yeah? Because you see that the artwork is always political, never fails to be political. Why? Because the artwork always deals with questions of desire, artwork always deals with questions of representation, and it is the balance between the two that really situates it within the politics. Yeah? It's not that it's possible to step away from representation. It's not that it's possible to, let's say, scrape representation off your work, because it is the surface, just like technology. But it is possible to find a way of connecting, of making desire operate. And desire works like a kind of solvent. Yeah? Maybe it's a very good example, but there's a kind of solvent, I would say, that dissolves or dislodges representation. Next point. Who can read the next point? So far, we are basically reading this do-it-yourself guide to non-fascist life, or non-fascist life for dummies. Yes.
Do not use thought to ground the political practice in truth, nor political action to discredit, as mere speculation, a lie of thought. Use political practice as an intensifier of thought, and analysis as multiplayer of the forms and dominance for the intervention of political action.
Okay, thank you. Do not use thought to ground a political practice in truth. Or, in other words, do not use thought to ground an artwork in truth. What do you think that means? What is the problem with thought here? Or what exactly what Foucault is saying when he says, do not use thought to ground the political practice in truth? Rationalization. Exactly. Do not, Rupert is right. Did you hear that?
No.
Do not, can you repeat it?
Rational.
Yeah. Do not rationalize. Be wary of rationalization. don't try to justify. Yes.
So, I have a question actually. What truth with capital T is he talking about?
Good, good. What do you think?
I don't know.
He says, I think that's what he says. He says, do not justify your politics by logic or reason. Well, that's a very interesting thing. Do not justify your politics by reason. What will you justify them with?
By action. Action.
But he used a different word. Action is good, but very good. But what kind of action? How do you know that it's the right action, not the wrong action?
Action is as an
Sorry?
intensifier.
Siobhan, what do you say?
Desire.
Desire, that's it. Yeah, don't justify your politics by appeal to truth. Justify it by appeal to desire. Go to the streets to have a party. Yeah? Go to the streets to have fun, to have sex. Base your politics on desire rather than on logic or on truth. Why? It's a very good question. Why? Well, because, what do you think? What do you think? Because if you appeal to truth, you can justify any kind of politics by an appeal to truth, by an appeal to logic. Yeah? Giovanni Gentile, that I mentioned earlier, who was the official philosopher of fascism, was the most consistent and logical philosopher, and probably the most true Hegelian that the world has ever known. So Foucault is saying that what it says here about the capital, who asked about truth with a capital T? Truth with a capital T, Caro, and it's such a good question, is equal to something else with a capital R?
Reality.
No.
Representation.
Representation. Yes. The truth with a capital T is the same as retreat into the forms of representation from the previous sentence. Representation is the kind of truth with a capital T because it is everywhere. Wherever you look, here is a representation. And here is another representation. And here is another representation. It's true. It is true. And yet, be wary. Be wary. Replace your substitute representation with desire. Yeah, it's a little bit like a kind of gluten-free diet, fascist-free diet. Yeah. So in this Foucault 5-step plan, you know, how to lose, you know, a stone of fascism a week. You know, rule number one, we already look at it. Stop this paranoid, totalizing thinking. Rule number two, exercise more. Get out of the house. Proliferation, you know, make stuff. Juxtaposition and disjunction. Don't think in these totalizing universal frames. Third rule of this Foucauldian diet, you know, negative is bad for you. Like sugar, you can find it in many things. It's not just like coming in a sugar bowl. It's also in your cereal. It's also in your alcohol. It's also in processed food. And so is the negative. This slack, this slackina, this slow is everywhere. You need to know to identify it and to get it out of your diet. Yeah? And do not think that you need to be sad just because you are on a diet. And don't appeal, don't say that you are on this diet because it is some kind of higher truth. base it on your desire. Yeah, you want to be good looking, you want to have more sex. That is much better than saying, you know, there is some kind of universal truth. Then, and use political practice as an intensifier of thought and analysis as a multiplier of the forms and domains for the intervention of political action. Use your practice to intensify thought. Yeah, this is very interesting. So don't justify your practice by appeal to reason or logic. Justify your practice by desire, because that's what you desire to do. That's what you want to do. Desire is kind of the life energy. Yeah, that's how you need to understand it. And who can I need to ask the next one?
So I just have a question.
Okay.
You said that you can justify everything by thought, and this is dangerous. But can't you justify everything by desire as well?
That's a good.
Can you use desire to justify things as well?
I think you can, but I think it will be different because desire, by its very nature, will be different. It's not totalizing. You know, desire is not like a class struggle that everyone has to be part of. You either are the capitalist or the proletariat. Your desire and my desire and your desire can be different. There is already multiplicity.
Because it's individual, so it's
not so much. I think because it is, well, on that level, yes, but also because it is pre-individual. You know, what then we really need to understand. We need to start getting into the question what he means here by desire, and that is the question of this book: how to understand desire and how to place desire at the root of politics.
I think if your desire is to kill someone, it's very dangerous. That's what I think. Yeah, this is what I'm doing.
But make no mistake, desire can be very dangerous. Yeah? The path that is opened here is not some kind of safe passage. You know, it is dangerous. The other one, the rational, reasonable one, is also dangerous because a rational argument justified the invasion of Vietnam. And then America, the power that successfully, not America, I mean United States of America, that successfully fought against fascism in Europe, also brought fascism to Southeast Asia. Yeah? So that's the Foucauldian analysis of this Vietnam War as justified rationally and reasonably. Yeah? So it's not like desire is somehow safer, but it shifts the emphasis from relying on the logical argument to perhaps maybe listening more to drives, to urges, to feelings. It's about giving feelings a sort of equal footing. Let's look at the next one. Could someone read that? Natalie, could you read it?
Do not demand of politics that it restore the rights of the individual, as philosophy has defined them. Sorry, this is ready to say that.
It's difficult to read. No, I can change the color. Just wanted to keep them all in different colors. But, how about now?
Do not demand of politics that it restore the rights of the individual, as philosophy has defined them. The individual is the product of the power. What is needed is to de-individualize by means of multiplication and displacement, diverse combinations. The group must not be organic, the organic bound, unity, hierarchies, individuals. but a constant generator of the de-individualization.
Okay, so what we have here, it says, do not demand of politics that restore the rights of the individual, because it's more interesting to find a way to de-individualize by means of multiplication and displacement. Yeah. So this suggests that, for instance, in terms of your art practice, that perhaps collaborations with other people, non-individual approaches to practice are more politically productive. Yeah. Simply because in collaborating, you already create a kind of de-individualization. You don't stand there and say, this is my work. Yeah, but this is our work. We made it together. And how we made it together? Well, our different desires somehow had to operate in unison. Yeah? What do you think? You don't know, you don't agree, so.
No, I don't agree. But
Tell
no,
us.
I mean, I don't agree. I don't know. Sometimes even, well, if you're working with a group, maybe some people among the group might have an idea that is dominating your idea. So then.
And here we have the answer to that about the ideas. Do not use thought to ground the political practice in truth, which means do not use ideas. Do not ground your artwork in ideas. Ground your artwork in desire. So that the first thing, and this is very interesting, try to get rid of ideas in your art. And very, very often, when people start their art, their process from an idea, and Foucault is saying, don't start from an idea. Don't start from an idea that you will later go and illustrate, because all you created here is totality. Start from desire. Just make something. Don't bother with ideas. You know, because somehow ideas will always find their way into the world. You don't need to plant this idea seed into the ground to watch it grow and become a painting or a video or something like that. Try to work without ideas. Yeah? And that will also allow you to go behind the individual. Yeah? Find collective, collaborative modes of working. Collaborate with other artists. Collaborate with your audience. Collaborate with curators. Yeah? That will, what is needed is to de-individualize by means of multiplication and displacement. Displacement might also mean take your artwork out of the gallery, displace it, put it in a factory, if there's still any factory, put it in a hospital, put it in a taxi, put it in someone's kitchen, rent Airbnb and put your artwork there, put it in a hotel room. And you know, all these things are done by artists. Yes? Make your kitchen into a gallery. That will be displacement. Does it make sense? Okay.
If you collaborate with a group, you're going to put forward ideas.
You're going to?
Put forward ideas, combine.
That would be one way to start. Or you could put forward something else. You could put forward practices, or objects, or gestures. Yeah? Foucault is warning us. We very habitually put forward ideas first, and we very habitually let practice follow ideas. Yeah? Now you remember that the title of these seminar sessions is What is Practice? And it is precisely what we are trying to investigate. How to break this chain, idea first, practice later. Yeah. Why we need to break this chain? Because this way of working, if this is the mechanism that is present in every artwork, isn't that slightly totalizing? Isn't that slightly determining the whole framework? Doesn't that become the surface of the work? idea first, practice later. If that is the surface, then it is kind of precludes the possibility for someone to work in another way. What if someone doesn't have ideas? What if someone is not an ideas person? Yeah? Marx famously says in the thesis on Feuerbach, he says, until now, philosophers always tried to understand the world. The point, however, is to change it. So philosophers always were trying to have ideas. Marx says, we don't need ideas, we need action. Yeah? No. That's, in a reconfigured way, what Foucault is also saying. Don't ever think that the idea is the starting point. Desire is the starting point. It could be that the idea and the desire appear at the same time. But if you didn't have a desire for something, you also wouldn't have an idea. So acknowledge that these two things are connected. Yeah? So if I get the idea to pick up the phone and call someone in the evening, maybe the reason I get this idea is because I already have a kind of desire to speak with them. Yeah? Perhaps the desire to speak with them, in a sense, precedes, or this is the requirement needed for the idea to happen. If I didn't have the desire, there wouldn't be an idea. And then maybe the desire is the more interesting thing, not the idea. What makes you wake up in the morning and start making your art? Assuming that's what you do. What makes you wake up in the morning? Well, Foucault is saying it's not some idea that puts you in front of your laptop, in the studio, in the seminar room. It is a desire. Okay, next one. Yes?
So how do philosophers or artists change the world by their action?
Very good question. What do you think?
Well, I can see that science has power.
Yes.
Not really the art, because I'm not saying that art is not powerful enough. It's too hard to understand for people who don't know art. So it has less influence.
Does it have less influence? It's interesting. Well, do you think art has influence?
Yeah, because it shows you the way out.
Shows you the way out.
The way out of getting out of there.
Yeah.
I think art is the only way to not become a representation of yourself.
Art is the only way?
To not become a representation yourself.
That's right. That's right.
And I also think that it's really wrong to differ between art and normal life, or what you just said, because there is no difference.
But my point is that you understand this thing, but for just a guy who walk on the street, they don't. Why?
Do you walk on the street?
Yes, but I mean,
we all walk on the street.
Did somebody subscribe to like the way of fascism, or did somebody subscribe to the way like totalitarian? Like these things are imposed on them, they don't realize it. Just because they don't realize it doesn't mean that they're still not part of it. Doesn't mean that you're still not being fascist yourself. So for them to not understand art, or for this, we don't have to understand it for it to exist. Is what I'm saying.
But I think you are absolutely right. It is incredibly hard. It is very, very hard. It's very hard not to be fascist. And there's no simple remedies here, you know. So you're right. It is incredibly difficult. So this, what you say, you know, how can philosophers or artists change the world? Well, with great difficulty, you know. And it's not a kind of, it's not a solution, but it's an insight of the way that can actually work without creating more fascism. Can you read the next one, the very, very short one? Because I think Alexander, that's exactly what you just said now.
Do not become power.
Do not become enamored of power. What does it mean? Do not fall in love with power. Because you said science is much more powerful. And how can art be as powerful as science? And Foucault is saying, don't fall in love with power. Don't be wary of the seduction of power. Be wary of the seduction of power. Everyone wants to be powerful. Everyone wants to have a faster car. Not everyone. But some people want to have a faster car, want to have a more powerful position at work, want to have control over more people, and Foucault, or want to be a more successful artist for that matter, want to exhibit in a bigger gallery. And Foucault is saying, don't fall in love with power. He's not saying to avoid power. He's not saying that power is bad. He's saying, don't fall in love with it. Yeah? Yes?
Very confusing. If artists and philosophers have the power to change, first question is, the only reason you can contemplate or have these thoughts and think about this is if the other thing exists, right? If power and the bad effects of power exist. If it doesn't exist, then there wouldn't be a reason for Deleuze and Guattari or for Foucault to actually start thinking in a way that is not the norm.
Correct.
Right? And considering that that is information, because of the things that happen, that is the information that you base your thought on. That is the surface. That is the surface for their arguments, right? It's that this exists, but this is not what you should do.
Yes.
You need to step out of it.
Yes.
But the idea of that itself is, I don't know, it's sort of idiosyncratic, right? It's just that you're contemplating on things only because they exist. If they didn't exist, then you wouldn't have the reason to contemplate.
Correct,
you wouldn't have
correct.
the reason to.
Yes.
We would all be subscribing or succumbing to one notion, and that would be totalitarian itself. If there was no Marxism,
yes,
then there would be no democracy.
If there was no Marxism, there would be no?
There would be no democracy. Because you don't know what is bad to know what is good, right? If you don't have the notion of what is bad, if you don't have the notion that fascism is bad,
yes,
then you wouldn't know any different. You wouldn't know if fascism is bad or good.
Yes.
So you would still be succumbing to fascism without
Yes.
knowing that fascism exists.
That's right.
So the idea of him saying that step away from it and succumb to desire is still saying desire is sort of fascism, right?
No. Well, desire is sort of fascism. Desire
It
can
manifests itself in different ways, but it's still the sort of.
Okay. I think I understand what you're saying, Vishal. He is desire